Vishal Sharma of Marinoya Inc. and principal at Marinoya Inc. and of course moderator and group manager of the Carrier Ethernet Group. And I am delighted to be here with you this morning. I am actually very excited to bring you something I call the TC3 Carrier case. So for some of you who are familiar with some of the videos I've made in the last couple of days, I have found some very interesting information at the Telecom Council Carrier Connections Conference. And one of the most interesting things that happened on day 2 was a series of case studies of carriers working with a number of different kinds of vendors to produce jointly, solve a lot of the carriers' problems or produce new services or a new aspect of the network, which can be very helpful for the carrier. So in this 3-part short video series, what I'm going to really do is to club 2 or 3 of these case studies together with each other. And in each of these case studies, I'm going to present to you 4 things. One is I highlight the quick facts about the carrier, so you have a bit of the background of what carrier we're talking about. We'll talk a little bit about the problem that is being solved, what the startup or the new company did to solve that problem, and what the results or deployment results or solutions were, if any, because some of these are works in progress, so deployment hasn't really happened yet. And the reason I'm doing that is that I think it's extremely valuable for people in the ecosystem to get visibility into the problems that the carriers are trying to solve and how innovative startups are addressing those problems. And I think this is very useful for architects, network and system engineers, and even executives at both vendors, software providers, application developers, and even emerging and forward-thinking service providers as they start to get a pulse of the carrier-related developments that are happening in our industry and what innovative carriers are doing in order to innovate in these very interesting, but of course challenging technologically as well as from a user perspective times in the industry. So I'm going to, in this video, I plan to discuss 2 related wireless infrastructure case studies. The first of them involves EE and parallel wireless, the vendor's parallel wireless, the operator is EE. And the second one we'll talk about is Telstra and Cohere Technologies. So let me start with the EE and parallel wireless studies. And I'm going to refer liberally to my notes here because I'm so excited to bring this information. I want to make sure that I communicate all of the nice notes that I've prepared here in order to summarize and distill this information so that anybody watching this gets the best information possible. And I'm going to separately make a mind map available, as I always do for many of my videos, where you'll see all of this information organized and you'll be able to access things in a single click, which I make available. But I just wanted to make the video first and supply you with the mind map as a follow-on. So EE quick facts, there were 2, the presentation was done by Steve Papa, who's the CEO and founder of Parallel Wireless, and Mansoor Hanif, who is CEO of EE, and he did a tremendous job when he joined EE in 2011 and between that then and now. And right now his focus is to look at RAN technologies and the rollout of the RAN. So EE, just for those of you who don't know, was formed by the merger of Orange and T-Mobile in the UK in 2010. They have 6.5 billion pounds in revenue, which is roughly about $9 to $10 billion US, 30 million subscribers, 12 million 4G subscribers as of 2012. That's the numbers that were available. And they have a fairly intense network, 18,500 macro sites. And that's after turning off about 8,500 macro sites, which they did over the last few years as they began to optimize their network, and over 13,000 people that work at EE. Now, the critical thing from another perspective or somebody who's looking to do business with these kinds of operators' perspective is that over the next 3 years, Mansoor announced that they're going to make £1.5 billion of investment in modernizing and expanding their infrastructure. So those are the quick facts. Now, what is the problem that EE was looking to solve, for which Parallel Wireless partnered with them? The basic issue with EE is that they are looking to expand coverage of their network, and they look at it innovation from the edges inside out. Outside in. So they look at the RAN and they look at the user experience and they look at small cells and even the set-top boxes at the end user. And all of those are areas in which they're going to innovate as they start modernizing their network. Now, the need to expand coverage came from the most current call of their current CEO, which is 3 mandates. We need to have 100% coverage, we need to have 100% reliable network, and we need 100% performance and value at the edge. Now, the way to extend coverage, of course, has to be done in a very cost-effective and economical manner. Now, In very, very rural areas, which are very remote, of course, you can just put up a small cell site, do a backhaul over satellite link, even though it's expensive, but there's really not much traffic there. So the cost of the link and the bandwidth is not that much. But if you're looking at urban and semi-urban areas and even more populated rural areas, then extending coverage economically was the challenge. And the way they did that was that instead of using various kinds of backhaul, they began to use a mesh of small cells. And the idea was that these small cells were really provided by Parallel Wireless, which includes, whose product includes an access point and integrated all in one, and whose access point router is designed to be as simple to deploy as a Wi-Fi access point. So that's the model, to make cellular as easy to deploy as Wi-Fi is today. And so what they ended up doing with Parallel is building a small network of macro cells that would extend the reach or coverage of their network as they built it out towards the rural edge. And in that process, they ended up innovating across all of the interfaces of the radio network, even including concepts like NFV, in order to better manage this integrated access router cum small cell device. So that was the problem being solved. And as I told you, the startup Parallel Wireless provided this integrated access router with sort of NFV style configurable capabilities that not only allowed ease of deployment, but also it had this mesh network capability, which allowed a small mesh network to be built as you expanded the network coverage further and further out towards the edges. And so the results are that as a result of this, they are moving towards 100% coverage in the UK, which is becoming an important brand value for EE. Now, why is EE trying to do this? Well, there's a reason behind that. And that stems from their belief that they want to become what's called a brilliant pipe, as opposed to merely just being a dumb pipe. And the idea is that by becoming a brilliant pipe, by having excellent coverage, and then by having an excellent, reliable network with great quality of service, they can actually partner collaboratively with the over-the-top operators and encourage them and entice them to go through the middle of the network, through the EE network, as opposed to over the top. So they want the operators not to treat this as a dumb pipe, but rather to treat this as an intelligent network, partner with them, and do a revenue share where EE provides high-quality network, and where the operator and potentially the over-the-top provider can work hand in hand in the following way. So when there is sort of problems or congestion in the network, the over-the-top operator gets notified. They make adjustments to their end transmission system so that they maybe use less bandwidth, or they use more economically bandwidth to all of their users. So as a result, every user of the over-the-top service experiences a slightly lower quality, but not as bad, as drastic as might happen if you were just using it as the network as a dumb pipe and you were subject to all the vagaries of the underlying network. And then you'd have to do a lot of shenanigans to incorporate things at the end customer system or the server-based end system over the top guy to incorporate problems in the network. Now, by partnering with the network and going through it or through the middle, the advantage is that you work collaboratively with the operator to solve congestion and other network operational problems. So the advantage is that your end users get a better quality of service, and the advantage for the operator is that they are able to ensure that their network utilization is more uniform, and the network planning is therefore uniform, capacity is used more effectively. So that's the EE Parallel Wireless example. And I want to then also quickly cover for you a very interesting case study that happened with Telstra and Cohere Technology. Now, Cohere was represented by Shlomo Rakib, who's their CEO, and Telstra was represented by Mark Sherman, who's the MD of Telstra Ventures. Now, the interesting part there was, well, Telstra, many of you are of course familiar with, but let me give you some quick facts. They're a US $11.7 billion revenue carrier out in Australia, as everyone knows, down under, 16.4 million subscribers as of December 2012. Their fixed data subscribers are about 3 million. Their fixed voice subscribers stand at about 6.1 million, as you might expect. The voice subscribers are going down, the mobile subscribers are going up. And at this present point, they have 6.7 million devices, about 5 million handsets, and then other, laptops, tablets, and such, which are connected to the 4G network. And they have achieved, as of December 2012, 9% coverage of the population in Australia, which is extremely good. But of course, they're not just confined to Australia. They just bought PacNet, which operates all over Asia, and they also have operations in 20 other nations. So that's the quick facts. Now, what are the problems that Telstra is trying to solve? So the problem that Telstra is actually trying to solve is the problem of remaining at the cutting edge of technology. I'm just looking for my notes here. And they want to develop the most advanced wireless technology standards possible, because they're looking several years out in the future. They're looking at 5G and even beyond that. And they're thinking, okay, what kind of technologies can we incorporate to remain at the cutting edge and maintain our competitive edge? And therefore, they partnered with Cohere. Now, Cohere is the inventor and implementer of a very interesting modulation format, a multidimensional modulation format called OSTF. I'm sorry, OTSF, which stands for orthogonal time, frequency, and spatial modulation. Now, the basic key idea, of course, there's a lot of theoretical work behind OTSF, but let me give you the key ideas in an essence. So basically what OTSF does is it allows you to better aggregate the wireless signals at the receiver, and thereby that is what is possible with current technologies. So what OTSF does is it uses the multipath, which is typically the big problem in wireless networks, to its advantage. And it does so by shifting the receiver signals from various multipath channels, either in time or in frequency or in space or some combination thereof, so that you have a useful signal copy available. It then coherently combines these copies of the signals to create a received signal at the receiver, which is much better than what would be possible with the other standard modulation formats. And as a result of this, it can support several times more throughput than current backhaul solutions can do that. And so the reason Telstra looked at it was because they wanted to enhance the network. And this is what Cohere provided, a completely new modulation, potentially revolutionary modulation format. And Telstra ran this whole technology through the ringer, through the works, bringing on board some of the most accomplished wireless experts that Telstra has, and they've been operating wireless networks for quite a while, to run the technology, to test it out in the lab, to look at the theoretical underpinnings of the technology. And when they were fully satisfied is when they decided to partner and deploy the technology. So again, the theme that you see recurring is that they were able to identify value first before they started, both from an operator's perspective and from Cohere as a vendor perspective. So now, what is the status today? What are the results of the deployment? So as a start, they are deploying the Cohere technology in the backhaul network, because that's something that Telstra fully has control, as opposed to deploying it in the RAN initially, because then you would need support from the end handsets and so forth. So in the backhaul network, you can replace, where you're doing microwave or wireless backhaul, you can use the Cohere technology to get much better capacity and much better performance. And they're looking at deployment, of course, initial deployments and then going to 5G and beyond. And so that is the value from Telstra's perspective. Now, as I said, this concludes part one of the video. I'd love for you to share your thoughts and your experiences, either working with the operators, or if you're contemplating working with the operators, how you think you might do that. And these technology insights in my network strategy and architecture videos are designed to give you a little window into how the carriers are thinking today. What is the thinking currently today? So you can take that information and knowledge and hopefully apply it in your interactions with the carriers. So yeah, by all means, please share your thoughts. And I will come back in part two, where we'll talk about another couple of sets of carriers, this time in the data center domain. And in the meantime, I will see you next. Thank you very much. See you next time.